guys, welcome back once again to WMMA Scene Now with your host Chuck Stevenson. So we're doing another fight preview. This fight was originally scheduled for back in November and it got canceled due to injury. And the reason I'm doing this preview for it, even though the fight's a month away, I just felt that this fight deserves it because it's garnering a lot of hype. I mean, you know, I did a video about the fight cancellation back in November, and it's one of my most viewed videos ever. It's still atop of my it's still constantly atop of my analytics list of videos, no matter like how many months later. It's still getting searched out, even though it said, you know, the fight was canceled for that event, and that was from November. But this fight is back on now, and I'm really happy to talk about it. It's an exciting fight, and it's been garnering a lot of attention online. So we're going to one championship, a new era, March 31st in Japan. It is for their 125-pound championship. It's going to be Xiong Jing Nan, or if you're in the West, is Jingnan Xiong. The Panda, 13-1, and she is defending her flyweight championship. Now, one calls it the strawweight championship, but for purposes for the rest of the world, we're going to call it the flyweight championship, versus unstoppable Angela Lee, 9-0. So Angela Lee is currently the one atomweight quotation champion. Really their strawweight division champion, and she is moving up in weight. Really, she's going to be fighting at the weight she probably should have been fighting at, to take on the champion. She's seeking to be, you know, one championship's first female two-weight champion. You know, everybody's trying to be a two-weight champion anymore. One has already done it with Nguyen, and now Angela Lee wants to be the first. But she's going up against a powerhouse in that division in Xiong Jing Nan, the Panda. So we're going to go over the strengths of each fighter and the keys to victory for each fighter. So we'll start with the challenger, unstoppable Angela Lee, who is moving up a weight class. So Lee's strengths. So Angela Lee is a submission wizard. All but 2 of her wins. So 7 of 9 wins have come by submission. Rear naked choke, anaconda choke. She even has a win by the twister, which is about as rare as hen's teeth. You know, she gets you on the ground, she's going to be going for a submission because she usually gets them. Another strength is that she is able to get those submissions because she has good takedowns. She's able to get you to the ground. She's rarely ever stopped in takedown attempts. And she does them in a variety too. Like she'll go for double leg and single legs, but then she also does trips. She does head and arm throws or hip tosses. So she has a variety of ways to get the fight to the ground. Another strength, and this is more of an intangible, but Angela Lee has a great support network. Okay, she trains out of her family's gym in Hawaii, so she has her family training with her 100%. You know, her dad, her mom, her brother who's a pro fighter, her sister who possibly could be a pro fighter in the future. She's still young. She's in her early teens. But and then now Angela Lee got married to a pro fighter and he moved to Hawaii. So now she's training with, she has that great family support network behind her that she knows no matter what, they're behind her 100%. They're there to support her. They're training with her. You know, they seem like they're pretty honest with her, you know, what she needs to do with her game. So she has that behind her. And that lends to the final strength is that Angela Lee is super confident. I mean, very confident. You know, And that comes from being undefeated. That comes from being a champion. That comes from the fact that, one promotes the hell out of her. And it doesn't faze her because she's confident. And again, she has that great support network behind her, which only even further lends to that confidence. So she's going to go in there believing 100% without a shred of a doubt that she's going to win this fight. She doesn't go into a fight with anything less than 100% sure of her surety that she knows she can win the fight. Okay? So now that we've gone over her strengths, let's go to her keys to the victory. Angela needs to get the takedowns early, and she needs to get them often. She is better on the ground than she is on her feet, and Xiong has shown some weaknesses on the ground in her last fight. So Angela needs to get those takedowns early, get them often, and work for those submissions. Okay, she needs to avoid prolonged striking exchanges. Angela is not totally well-rounded yet. Her striking is getting better, but it still needs a lot of work. She is very hittable, and that will only feed in to Xiong's striking, which we'll talk about in a minute. She needs to avoid those prolonged striking exchanges, which goes back to the earlier key. Get those takedowns early and often. Don't get hit by Xiong over and over again, okay? She got hit a bunch of times hard versus Mei Yamaguchi, and Estela Nunez was lighting her up on the feet as well. So avoid those prolonged striking exchanges. Stick to your strengths. Okay? And then once she gets it, again, the third key goes back to building up on these other two. Go for the submission finish. You know you can get submissions, so go for it. That's what you got to do. You know you're a specialist. You know what you specialize in, so go for that submission finish. I mean, avoid going into later rounds. Get it early if you can. Okay, so now we've talked about Angela Lee. Let's go in. Let's talk about the defending champion, Xiong Jing Nan. Xiong's strengths. She is arguably more well-rounded than Angela Lee because her striking game is much better than Lee's. But Xiong is also good with submissions. She's good on the ground. She's good with the stand-up, good with the ground. She has decent takedowns of her own. She can submit you on the ground. She can finish you with strikes on the ground. She can finish you with strikes on the feet. She knocked out TKO Tiffany Teo in, I believe, the 4th round of the championship fight after battering her for the previous 3 rounds. Which leads me into my next of Xiong's strengths. Xiong is a hard hitter. I mean, she hits hard. Probably going to be the hardest hitter that Angela Lee has ever faced. I mean, go back, watch the fight with Tiffany Teo. She battered Teo with hard strikes and just found a way through her guard again and again. And Teo's face looked like ground meat at the end of that fight. I mean, credit to Tiffany Teo. She got it up for as long as she could. But Xiong, it just hits that hard. Okay? Next of Xiong's strengths is that she is more experienced. Now, it's only a few fights, 14 fights total to 9. That 5 fights can make a difference. Okay? And that 5 fights can adds to Xiong's confidence. Because, that's what fighting more often does. Once Angela got the title, she didn't fight as often. Now, granted, she had that injury from the car wreck, and then the complications from it, caused her to pull out of this fight in November from its original date. So she hasn't been able to always defend as often. But then again, as soon as she won the belt, she went almost a year without defending it, without any injury. And that allowed, that was fights that she could have used to gain experience. But Xiong does fight more often. Xiong has the more experience. So she's going in there having been in more situations and fights than Angela Lee has. And Xiong has also been in trouble in fights before, whereas Angela Lee really hasn't. So that's experience in itself, knowing that she can be in trouble and get out of it. Whereas Angela Lee has pretty much always been very dominant in her fights, minus the fights against Mai Yamaguchi when she got put on her ass. And then finally, Xiong's final strength is that she's fighting in a weight class that she's been fighting in her whole career, the 125-pound weight class. Angela Lee is technically moving up in weight. Now, she was always cutting a lot of weight to fight at the strawweight class, but now she's moving up to, the actual flyweight class, and she's going to be fighting at this weight for the first time against someone who is used to fighting at this weight. So Xiong is used to fighting this weight. She's been fighting other girls this size compared to Lee, who was, honestly, like I've talked about this in another video, Lee was fighting against smaller opponents mostly. So Xiong is going to be used to fighting at this size, used to fighting with this strength. She just has, this is her home. This is her weight class. So that's going to feed, it's going to be an advantage to her. Xiong's keys to victory. She needs to look for holes in Lee's guard on the feet. And believe me, those holes are there. I alluded to it earlier. I mentioned it earlier. That Estela Nunez found the holes very easily. And watch the two fights with Mai Yamaguchi, especially the second one. Mai kept finding a home for that overhand right. I think it was an overhand right. Again, and again. Put Angela Lee on her ass, I think, 2 or 3 times in that fight. And in the first fight, really put her down. I mean, shocked the world with that one. So, Xiong needs to look for those holes to effectively strike and, hit her with those power punches because those holes are there. Xiong also needs to avoid compromising situations. In her last fight against Ballin, she gave up her back at one point, and Ballin was on her back in standing back mount. You can't do that with Angela Lee because Angela Lee is most likely going to be able to find a finish, find a submission. So Xiong needs to avoid those compromising situations. If she can keep it standing and avoid the takedowns, that's the better for her. And finally, Xiong needs to, if it goes to the ground, Xiong needs to stay on top. We've never really seen Angela Lee having a fight from guard too often. Very little, to hardly ever. So Xiong needs to stay on top because that's where she's going to be better fighting at, and that'll be Lee's weakness because she hasn't been put on her back really too often in MMA fights. At least not in actual fights. Don't know of training, but how often does she use it in fights? So Xiong needs to stay on top and work on ground and pound and submissions of her own. So guys, that's what I have as far as, what each of these fighters brings to the table in their fight and what each of them needs to do in this fight. As far as my prediction goes, I was looking at Tapology. They don't have any betting odds on this. They do have a survey. 94 out of 94 voters, 86% are picking Lee, 14% are picking Xiong. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to pick for Xiong. I think that she has strengths that Lee hasn't worked on yet, especially in the striking department. Lee hasn't faced a hitter like Xiong, and Xiong is accurate with those punches. And she's good on the ground as well. I mean, she's a truly well-rounded fighter, which Angela Lee mostly has not fought. She's mostly been fighting specialists. The one fighter who was truly well-rounded that Lee has fought was Mei Yamaguchi, and Mei Yamaguchi was the fighter to give her the most trouble. I just think that Xiong, being the fighter who's fighting in her own weight class that she's used to fighting in, and being well-rounded and having those power punches, it's just going to be too much for Angela Lee. And I think that one championship is going to take a big hit as far as our hype job goes. Because, they have made Angela Lee a big star, especially they've tried to at least make her a big star in Singapore. I don't know how big of a star she really is. But I think that one championship is going to take a hit on this one because they're trying to make Lee even bigger at the expense of their Chinese champion, and I think this one is going to bite them in the ass. So I'm going to pick Xiong Jing Nan to win, possibly by KO, TKO, but just as likely by decision. I don't see Xiong getting winning by submission. Now, if Lee were to win, I would say it would be by submission if she were to win. But for this fight, I'm definitely picking Xiong Jing Nan to win. Guys, let me know what you think about this fight breakdown. Let me know what you think about the fight itself in the comments down below. Guys, thumbs ups are always appreciated. It helps bump the videos up as far as getting the word out about them. And if you're watching this and you haven't yet, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to WMMA now. We're the best, fastest growing women's mixed martial arts dedicated platform on YouTube. Guys, I'm out. I gotta go to bed. Have a good night.